Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the heavy gates of a palace where silk rustles like whispers, fountains dance in moonlight, and birds sing. Not with feathers, but with gears. This is no ordinary menagerie. You're about to enter the hidden world of Sultan Ahmed III, ruler of the Ottoman Empire in the early 1700s, and unexpected collector of mechanical marvels. Picture this. You're padding across cool marble floors, your breath catching as you round a corner, and there, in a golden cage, is a tiny songbird. Its chest moves, it chirps, it flutters, but not a single bone in its body is real. It blinks with glass eyes. It sings through clockwork lungs, and it might just be smarter than you. Oh, and by the way, you probably won't survive this. Not because of any danger, but because your brain might actually melt from sheer wonder. Or from trying to figure out how this bird is singing Beethoven 50 years before Beethoven was even born. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in. Now ease back. Maybe crack a window for that cool breeze or wrap yourself in your softest blanket. Let the dark settle around you. Take a breath and follow me back. The year 1703, and you've just arrived at the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. The sun bakes the sandstone walls, but inside these sprawling grounds, it's surprisingly cool, thanks to centuries-old fountains, thick garden shade, and walls designed to hold onto shadow like a secret. You shuffle past guards in crisp uniforms and eunuchs with watchful eyes, your sandals whispering over mosaic tiles. All around you, luxury drips from every surface. Silk curtains in impossibly saturated hues, gold-inlaid woodwork, tiles painted with cobalt peacocks, and hallways that seem to vanish into fantasy. You're not alone here. You pass scribes, dancers, concubines, foreign visitors, all busy orbiting the same gravitational force. Sultan Ahmed III. He's relatively new to the throne, but already, his reign feels different. For one, there's laughter echoing from his private garden. Courtiers say he paints tulips in his spare time and writes romantic poetry under a pen name. And then there's the collection. Not jewels, not horses. No, he's collecting mechanical birds. The first one you see is resting inside a gilded cage with a dome top. It's the size of a sparrow and perched like it's alive, glossy wings angled just so. Then it moves. The head tilts. The beak opens. A cascade of chirps pours out, uncanny and lovely, like a flute that learned how to flirt. You instinctively step back. That thing isn't alive, but it feels alive. Here's the thing, you live in a world before electricity, before batteries, circuits, or any app telling you to take a breath. If something moves, it's either alive or someone's pulling a string. But this bird, it moves by itself. It sings when the Sultan walks in. Its eyes follow you as you shift from foot to foot. And the unsettling part? It seems pleased with itself. Historians still argue whether Ahmed's collection started as mere curiosity or something more. A statement, maybe, about control or the illusion of life. Either way, he's obsessed. And unlike most rulers of his time, he doesn't just want to own these wonders. He wants to understand them. You follow a steward through a side door and into a smaller courtyard. It's quiet here, the air thick with the smell of rosewater and machine oil. A silver basin bubbles gently in the corner. And there, under a pergola draped in blooming vines, sits the Sultan himself. Not on a throne, but cross-legged on a divan, a velvet cushion under each elbow. He looks younger than you expected, his beard trimmed neatly, a faint ink smudge on his finger. He's holding a little brass bird up to the light. His eyes glint with amusement. "Watch this," he murmurs. He twists a hidden dial near the tail feathers, and the bird begins to sing again, this time with two distinct notes. Then it hops forward, pauses, and does a little shake, like a pigeon fluffing its feathers. You can't help it, you grin. The Sultan laughs softly, clearly delighted by your reaction. And just like that, you're hooked. A few hours later, you're ushered into what the palace staff call the Gilded Room. No one knows what it was originally built for. Maybe music, maybe intrigue. Now, it's a mechanical aviary. Inside are cages stacked in elegant tiers, each holding a different marvel. A red-throated robin with moving wings, a pair of lovebirds that chirp in harmony, a hawk that blinks and turns its head so smoothly it makes your skin prickle. And in the center, on a high golden perch, sits a nightingale. She's larger than the others and covered in fine mother-of-pearl scales. When the Sultan claps, she doesn't just sing. She composes, switching between modes and trills like a royal DJ with feathers. Of course, nothing truly alive could do this. But you stop caring about that somewhere between her fifth and sixth glissando. The story goes that this nightingale was a gift from a French ambassador who wanted to avoid a war. Better to send gears and song than soldiers. And it worked. Ahmed was so smitten he halted negotiations just to tinker with the bird's mechanism. Some say it contains over 200 microparts. Tiny springs, wheels, and cams so delicate they can't be repaired without destroying the whole thing. You squat beside one cage near the far wall. Inside, a parakeet hops from perch to perch, mimicking the sound of a call to prayer. It's charming, until you realize that each note is perfectly timed to the real muezzin's voice echoing from a nearby minaret. How? You whisper. No one answers, but a steward smirks as if to say, that's the whole point, isn't it? Mechanical marvels were hardly new in the Ottoman world. The Abbasids had their elephant clocks. Earlier sultans owned elaborate water organs and puppet shows. But something about this living collection feels different. Less for show, more for control, for comfort, for companionship. You can't help wondering, does Ahmed trust people less than he trusts machines? That night, as you lie on a floor mattress under painted ceiling stars, you swear you hear chirping from beyond the corridor. Not real chirping, something more metallic, like a wind-up lullaby played on a tiny stage somewhere in the dark. It repeats, soft and precise. You roll over, eyes wide open. Far away, inside the gilded room, a bird continues to sing. No one wound it up. No one asked it to, but still it sings. You wake to warm sunlight slanting through stained glass windows, casting red and turquoise onto the polished floor. Outside, the city hums with the clatter of hooves, boat horns from the Bosphorus, and the ever-present call to prayer drifting on the breeze. But inside the palace walls, time runs differently, slower, controlled, like one of the Sultan's clocks, ticking only when he says so. You follow your nose toward breakfast, simmered quince, honeyed flatbread, and bitter coffee strong enough to wake a corpse. But before you can enjoy a second bite, a young page arrives, breathless and pink-faced. You're wanted in the courtyard. By the tinkerers. You blink. The who? He repeats it as if it should make perfect sense. And so, wiping crumbs from your sleeve, you trail him deeper into the palace grounds, past citrus trees and marble colonnades, until you reach a small, locked door tucked between two domes. It's easy to miss exactly the point. The page knocks twice, then thrice more. The door swings open. The first thing you notice is the smell. Not unpleasant, just unexpected. A blend of beeswax, metal filings, ink, and something vaguely herbal. The room beyond is narrow, stacked floor to ceiling with scrolls, diagrams, and what look like half-assembled toys. A mechanical squirrel dangles upside down from a chain. On the far wall, an automaton hand is practicing calligraphy. And at the center of it all, hunched over a marble-topped table, is a man in soot-streaked robes carefully adjusting a tiny hinge with tweezers. This is Ibrahim Effendi, chief palace engineer, eccentric polymath, and the closest thing Ahmed has to a wizard. Ibrahim glances up, one eye magnified grotesquely by a monocle lens strapped to his forehead. "Ah," he mutters. "Another one come to spy." You're about to protest when he breaks into a grin and waves you closer. "This is where the real empire runs," he says. "Not in the divan, not in the treasury. Here, with springs and gears." And he might be right. You see no guards, no ministers, just a small team of artisans, apprentices, and mathematicians hunched over contraptions that defy belief. One man is trying to make a copper fish swim in a bowl without touching it. Another is assembling a tiny flute-playing monkey whose fingers move with unnerving grace. This hidden lab is the beating heart of Ahmed's mechanical obsession, and it's been expanding quietly, steadily throughout the palace. What started with imported novelties has become a full-fledged research program, albeit one cloaked in silk and secrecy. Historians still argue whether the Sultan bankrolled these efforts out of genuine scientific interest or sheer vanity. Perhaps both. But what's certain is that he encouraged innovation like few rulers of his time. He funded clockmakers, paid foreign artisans absurd sums to relocate, and gave these tinkerers their own corner of the palace, a sanctuary for precision. You pause beside a display table filled with winding keys. Not just ordinary keys, each is shaped like something fanciful. A falcon, a crescent moon, even a miniature sword. Ibrahim chuckles when he sees your interest. They say the key to paradise is shaped like no door, he says cryptically, before returning to his work. And what work it is. Today, they're dissecting a broken nightingale. Its innards spill across the table in neat spirals of brass and silk. You recognize it, this bird sang yesterday. Now its eyes are blank, its wings limp. One apprentice points to a torn mesh inside its throat mechanism. Dust, he mutters. Again. Apparently, palace birds don't just need winding, they need maintenance. That's what the tinkerers are for. Not just creation, caretaking. You trail deeper into the workshop, past scrolls marked with equations and Ottoman annotations in red ink. One chart shows the anatomy of a real sparrow next to a mechanical version. It's disturbingly accurate. Every bone, gear, tendon, and spring in careful comparison. You wonder how many birds were examined to make it. Eventually, you're led into a back room where tulips bloom under glass domes, lit by hidden mirrors bouncing sunlight from the courtyard. This isn't just for beauty, it's for inspiration. Ahmed adores tulips, and he's had engineers study how the petals open with temperature. One contraption here mimics it exactly. When the room heats up, a metal tulip blooms, revealing a tiny mechanical bee inside that buzzes on a spring. Whimsy? Maybe. But it's also design biomimicry centuries before the term existed. You sit on a low bench, head spinning. This place feels less like a royal lab and more like a dream Da Vinci might have had after too much spiced wine. But here's the twist. Not all of this is Ottoman in origin. Ibrahim shows you a device wrapped carefully in velvet. It's heavy and cool to the touch, something like a pocket watch, but thicker, with delicate etchings around the edge. He pops it open. Inside is a crude bird, stiff and awkward, but undeniably Western. He taps its side and it jerks to life, squawking two off-key notes before jamming. Swiss, he says with disdain. Or maybe French. The spring's wrong. The gears are too soft. But clever enough, I suppose. He claims it came from a merchant ship, likely smuggled past customs disguised as a trinket. But others say Ahmed's agents actively sought out these devices abroad, paying handsomely for anything novel. Automata were circulating across Europe at the time, especially in France and Germany, where watchmakers and toymakers blurred the line between artistry and engineering. And the Ottoman court wanted in. In fact, it's said that Ahmed personally wrote to Louis XIV, requesting a songbird that never tires, a flute that plays itself, and a nightingale who sings only for me. Whether that letter ever reached Versailles is debated, but what's clear is that soon after, a wave of foreign mechanisms began arriving in Istanbul, often through diplomatic channels. You ask Ibrahim if he minds working with foreign designs. He shrugs. A bird is a bird, but if you understand the bones, you can make it sing in Turkish. Later, as you leave the lab, you notice a peculiar machine near the door. It looks like a chessboard, but instead of pieces, there are tiny dancers in court dress. A hidden gear beneath the surface causes them to spin, bow, and sway in perfect rhythm. You reach out to touch one, and the entire board shudders to life. A bell chimes softly. The dancers begin their performance. It lasts 30 seconds. When they finish, each returns to its original position. Silent, waiting. There's a reason the Sultan keeps this room locked. Outside, the palace gardens shimmer in late afternoon sun. Tulips wave lazily in the breeze, oblivious to the strange revolution blooming in their midst. Courtiers laugh, children chase peacocks, and in the background, you hear a faint click-click chirp from somewhere unseen, and you realize you're in a world halfway between nature and machine. One foot in the old empire, and one toe dipping into something else entirely. You've been in the palace long enough now that the guards recognize you with a polite nod, and the concubines stop pretending you aren't there. You even start anticipating the rhythm of the birds. When they'll sing, which one will chime in, the mechanical duet in the garden at sundown. There's a strange comfort in the regularity. Unlike humans, the birds never change their moods, never hold grudges, never whisper behind silken fans. But then, one morning, something goes wrong. You're enjoying breakfast again. Today it's pistachio pastries and sweet melon slices. When the steward from before returns, no pink cheeks this time, just a tight-lipped nod and a whispered, "You're wanted in the gilded room." Now, the urgency pricks your neck. You hurry past tiled halls and marble pools, through a passage hidden behind a tapestry of, what else, songbirds perched on tulips. Inside the gilded room, the air feels wrong, thicker, warmer. You smell oil, burned oil. One of the cages is empty. Another one, housing a copper-plated dove, is shattered, its hinges bent like a crushed insect wing. A pool of brass feathers glints on the floor like someone spilled a drawer of coins. And there's the Sultan, seated on a cushion, face pale and drawn, his usual serenity replaced by a strange blend of grief and anger. He's holding a broken beak in his hand, turning it slowly. You clear your throat, uncertain. "It sang the wrong song," he says without looking up. At first, you think he's joking, but then he shows you the music scroll, the punched ribbon that controls what melody the bird plays. Someone has altered it, just slightly, enough to shift the tune from one of Ahmed's favorite court songs to a French children's lullaby. Now, unless you're the kind of person who regularly rewrites mechanical music code in Ottoman Turkish for fun, this isn't something that happens by accident. The birds don't improvise. You kneel beside the shattered cage. There are marks on the metal, fine scratches around the lock. And that's when it hits you. Someone's been tampering with the Sultan's automata, in secret, and not just for mischief. This feels intentional. Historians still argue whether it was an inside job by a rival courtier or an outside agent using the birds as a Trojan horse. But whoever it was, they knew what they were doing. You remember Ibrahim's workshop, the back room full of foreign mechanisms, the disassembled gifts from ambassadors. Were they all safe? Or were some of them little ticking spies, waiting for the right time to sing the wrong song? Ahmed clearly suspects betrayal, but instead of responding with violence or arrests, he doubles down. Within days, the tinkerers are given new orders. More birds, more complexity, more security. The palace is to become the global center of mechanical mastery. If enemies want to use machines, fine, Ahmed will use better ones. You visit the workshop again and find the team working in shifts around the clock. Ibrahim looks haggard, a smear of ink on his temple and his robe inside out. He barely grunts in greeting. "What are you making now?" you ask. He gestures toward a massive cage the size of a dining table. Inside it, a brass peacock is being assembled. Its tail is a lattice of articulated rods and jewel-colored enamel. Its head already moves, nodding with a smug mechanical elegance. But its voice module is still open, exposed like a throat during surgery. "This one," Ibrahim says, "will sing only if it recognizes your voice." Your eyebrows shoot up. "Like a password?" He nods. "More or less. You're watching the first biometric automaton in the Empire." He explains that they've been experimenting with echo chambers and pitch recognition, primitive sound matching technology based on resonance and delay. It's not perfect, but it's enough to prevent someone from hijacking the birds again. You realize something else, too. Ahmed isn't just protecting his toys. He's building a future, subtle at first. But soon, you begin to notice other changes across the palace. Servants guided not by bells, but by little mechanical beetles that crawl along set paths with tiny scrolls on their backs. A water jug that tilts itself when you pass, based on your weight on the floorboards. a perfume fountain that sprays only when the air reaches a precise humidity. These aren't just amusements, they're smart devices, centuries ahead of their time. One afternoon, you follow a whisper down a quiet hallway near the Sultan's private quarters. There, in a curtained alcove, you see something that stops you cold. A metal child. It sits upright, cross-legged, with its eyes closed. Delicate joints gleam under its tunic. A wooden tablet rests in its lap. When a servant speaks a verse of poetry aloud, the child's eyes open, and it begins to write. Perfect calligraphy, smooth as silk. You swallow. It's beautiful and eerie. Poetry automaton. Someone murmurs beside you. Only writes what it hears. You don't ask how it works. Some things are better left half understood. Later that night, the Sultan hosts a private viewing of the new peacock in his garden pavilion. You're there, along with a handful of courtiers, a Persian ambassador, and an elderly harpist who keeps falling asleep mid-note. The peacock is unveiled beneath a velvet cloth. It struts forward when its cage opens, tail feathers rising like a fireworks fan. Then it pauses. Ahmed steps forward and speaks a command phrase. The bird tilts its head and lets out a cascading melody so rich, so layered, you almost forget it's not real. The crowd applauds. The harpist wakes up with a snort. But you notice something no one else seems to. A tiny blink in the peacock's eyes. A flicker of a lens adjusting. Is it watching you? Ibrahim appears at your side. The eyes, he says quietly, are mirrors. They only reflect. But you're not convinced. You return to your room that night feeling a little less certain. The birds don't just sing now, they respond. The palace isn't just decorated with machines. It's aware. Every door that opens before you, every light breeze triggered by a motion fan, every bird that chirps when you enter. None of it feels coincidental anymore. It's like living in a music box you can't escape. And yet, you don't want to leave. You remember the broken dove, the lullaby that wasn't supposed to play. You wonder who changed that scroll. And why? Was it a warning? A prank? Or something else entirely? You fall asleep with that question echoing in your mind. And in the distance, as always, something sings. Dreaming of quiet gardens and jeweled feathers when the palace wakes you with a start. Not with shouting, not with drums, but with music, too much music. From every wing, every courtyard, every hidden nook where a mechanical bird might rest, there's a rising chorus. Chirps, trills, fluted melodies, clicking beaks and thumping springwork, all overlapping like 1,000 clocks going off at once. It's not beautiful. It's chaos. You throw on your robes and stumble into the corridor, joining a wave of sleepy-eyed servants and courtiers whispering nervously. Something's gone haywire. In the garden, one of the nightingales is spinning in circles, its song looped into a frantic trill. A tiny robin slams itself into the bars of its cage again and again. You pass a rose-colored finch perched on a balcony, its beak stuck wide open, trembling as if mid-scream. Then you hear the voice of Ibrahim, echoing from the central courtyard. Shut them down. All of them. You follow the noise. The courtyard looks like a battlefield for clockwork animals. A goose has collapsed in a puddle, wings twitching. The famous flute-playing monkey is slumped sideways, letting out an eerie, flat note on repeat. Sparks dance from the tail of a peacock. And through it all, the tinkerers sprint from device to device, frantically winding down cranks, pulling pins, breaking mechanisms by hand when needed. The Sultan arrives, flanked by guards, his face unreadable. He surveys the scene. You half expect him to rage, to accuse, to punish. But instead, he sighs. Enough birds, he says softly. For now. The next day, all automata are deactivated and locked away. The rooms that once shimmered with chirping and cooing fall silent, their gold cages draped in cloth like coffins. You miss the sound without realizing how much you depended on it. The palace feels hollow, like something's holding its breath. Historians still argue what caused the meltdown. Some blame a solar flare, excessive heat warping the tiny scrolls. Others whisper of sabotage, a final insult from the same saboteur who rewrote the lullaby. and a few quietly suggest something more ominous, that the machines grew too smart, that they began to learn patterns, develop unintended rhythms, resonate with each other in a kind of mechanical mimicry. Whatever the truth, it frightened Ahmed, but not for the reason you think. He wasn't afraid of losing control. He was afraid he hadn't gone far enough. In the silence that follows, the Sultan becomes a ghost in his own palace, wandering late at night, wrapped in embroidered robes, speaking only in fragments. You hear reports of him spending hours in the Topkapi library, poring over texts from China, Persia, even ancient Alexandria. Searching, always searching, for something. One evening, you find him sitting alone in the aviary. The real one, with live birds. They're quiet too, as if they know they're being compared. Ahmed gestures you closer. "Do you hear it?" he asks. You strain your ears. Just wind, maybe a few sleepy coos. "No order," he says. "Just instinct. Randomness. The machines never had that." He seems sad. Not regretful, but wistful. Like he's mourning a dream he didn't quite manage to hold. And it's true. His birds were brilliant, wonders of the age. But they were too perfect. They lacked the unpredictability of real life. A mistake, a flourish, a spontaneous flutter. None of it could be programmed, no matter how skilled the engineer. And for a man obsessed with detail, that imperfection now seems desirable. You return to Ibrahim's lab the next day, expecting disarray. Instead, you find it transformed. Gone are the tables filled with bird parts. In their place, sketches of water wheels, lenses, balance systems, and something strange. A sphere split into layers with rotating rings around a central axis. "An orrery," says Ibrahim, seeing your puzzled look, "to model the heavens." This delicate work, harder than the birds. But Ahmed has a new obsession now, astronomy. Not just the stars, but the movement of stars. Predictable, yes, but beautiful in its vastness. You realize that in abandoning the birds, he hasn't given up on machines. He's just thinking bigger, much bigger. That week, new craftsmen arrive at the palace. Some from Damascus, others from as far as Delhi. They're builders of towers, mathematicians, astrologers. One even claims to have studied under a Jesuit priest who once mapped the moons of Jupiter. The workshop hums again, not with birdsong, but with the quiet language of cosmology. You begin to see new machines, things that track the moon's phase, tell time by candlelight, measure the position of Venus with shadow and scale. Some are simple, like a compass inlaid with ivory. Others are wildly complex, like a sundial that shifts itself based on seasonal tilt. But the grandest project is the celestial globe. Ahmed wants a sphere that doesn't just look like the heavens, but moves like them. One ring for each planet, another for the sun. A globe within a globe, with levers to show eclipses, sliders to predict conjunctions. You watch as Ibrahim and his team begin to carve the first rings from polished brass. And slowly, over the weeks, something magical happens. The palace, which had once chirped and sung with mechanical birds, now pulses with the quiet music of the cosmos. The Sultan's gardens are lit by sundials instead of oil lamps. Children are taught to read the stars before they're taught to write. And at night, from the highest dome of the palace, you can hear the gentle click of the orrery turning and turning and turning. One afternoon, as you stand beside Ahmed on the terrace, he points to a flock of real starlings wheeling in the sky. "They move like gears," he says. You watch them bank left, then right, their formation tight and fluid. And yet, he adds, no spring, no wire, just instinct. You realize something important in that moment. He hasn't given up on perfection. He's just redefined it. The mechanical birds were a beginning, a first act. But now his vision is larger. The whole universe, rendered in brass and glass and belief. Not to control it, but to understand it. To replicate, even in miniature, the divine machinery of the heavens. And you're here to witness it all. The age of the birds may be over, but the Sultan's machines are only just beginning to sing. It's the silence that teaches you to listen differently. Without the chirps and trills of the mechanical birds echoing from every chamber, the palace has shifted. The absence is almost physical, like a tapestry taken down, leaving behind its ghost on the wall. But in this hush, new sounds emerge. The wind through cedar screens, the hiss of quills over parchment, the faint click of gears in the distance. Different now, slower, deeper. And the Sultan is always there, somewhere in that quiet. He's not the same man who beamed over wind-up sparrows. He moves with more gravity now. Sometimes you catch him standing still in the courtyard for hours, watching the sun slide across the stones. Sometimes he walks alone beneath the domes, whispering to himself in Arabic, Turkish, Persian, blending languages the way an artist blends ink. Then, one evening, you're summoned. Again, that same steward, sleepless eyes, whispering corridors. But this time, you're not led to a courtyard or the gilded room. You're taken to the harem library. Few are allowed here, fewer still after dark. It smells like aged paper and sandalwood, the walls covered in shelves of bound manuscripts, many older than the palace itself. You spot diagrams from ancient Greece, astronomical tables from Mughal India, and in the center of the room, beneath a canopy of bronze filigree, lies a model, the planetarium. It's still unfinished, but already you can see its promise. Concentric rings of gold and silver, each rotating independently. The Earth at the center, surrounded by small spheres for the moon, the planets, and finally, the stars, hand-painted on an indigo band that turns ever so slowly. A mechanical sky. Ahmed appears behind you. You know what this is? He asks, gently turning one of the rings. An orrery, you answer. He nods. And more. He tells you he no longer wants machines that sing. He wants machines that remember. That night, he explains the vision that's been growing in his mind. Not merely entertainment, not even tools, but repositories. Automata that encode not only motion or melody, but memory itself, knowledge stored in motion, not words. Imagine a mechanism, he says, that can simulate the flood patterns of the Nile. A device that can teach medicine or poetry or military formation, all by movement, rhythm, repetition. You blink. The birds were toys. This is legacy. He sketches it out for you. A kind of mechanical scholar. Human-shaped, perhaps, but more like the writing child you saw once. Its mind not based on thought, but on instruction. Dials, levers, memory scrolls of paper and brass. A way to teach the future without waiting for scribes or scholars. He calls it the dream machine. And it's not just theoretical. He's already begun construction. In the lowest vaults beneath the palace, below the kitchens, even below the cisterns, you follow Ahmed and Ibrahim into a hidden chamber where the dream machine is taking shape. The room is cool and damp, lit by oil lamps. On a stone table lies a humanoid frame, its joints delicately fitted with ivory washers, its limbs constructed not for grace but stability. But the most important part is the chest. Inside it, a cylinder of scrolls, packed tightly with punched holes. Each hole a command, each command a movement, a coded language that, when read by a system of wheels and cogs, could direct the automaton to perform tasks, not just gestures. You're witnessing the earliest form of programmable learning. This goes beyond birds, beyond music. This is a machine not just for entertainment, but for education. A metal tutor, a brass-bodied sage. Historians still argue whether Ahmed ever completed it. Some say he abandoned the project before it was fully operational. Others believe fragments of the machine were hidden after his death, scavenged for parts, or spirited away by jealous rivals. A few dreamers even claim it's still down there, ticking softly in the dark, waiting for someone to give it a new scroll. But that night, you see it real, tangible, breathing only through the language of gears. Ahmed explains how it would teach geometry through physical demonstration, moving shapes on a board, or recite Sufi poetry from memory, using embedded rhythm wheels, or simulate the effects of disease on the body, turning dials to show progression, recovery, or decline. It's part machine, part library, part oracle, and it's deeply personal. Because here's the truth. Ahmed knows he won't live forever. The mirrors on the palace walls are beginning to reflect more gray in his beard. His walk is slower, and though he smiles, it often fades too quickly. This machine is his echo. You spend hours down there watching Ibrahim adjust springs, test the scroll mechanism, frown at a joint that clicks the wrong way. At one point, he mutters something you can't quite hear. You lean in. "It's thinking," he says, only half joking. But even as the dream machine takes shape, the palace above begins to shift again. Without the birds, the nobles grow restless. They loved the spectacle, the singing garden, the gossip of mechanical menageries. And now that the automata are quiet or repurposed, some begin to wonder what Ahmed is really doing in the depths of his palace. One even spreads a rumor that the Sultan is building a mechanical replacement for his son. The idea catches fire. People whisper about a soulless heir, a sultan made of springs, that he's trying to defy death, cheat God, become immortal through invention. Ahmed ignores them, but you see the toll it takes. He begins to withdraw, holding court less often. Instead, he hosts private lectures in the vault, inviting only those who truly understand what he's trying to build. You are among them, and one night, as you watch the dream machine sketch a perfect circle with a small bronze stylus, Ahmed turns to you and asks, "Do you think it's wrong?" You hesitate. "No," you say. "I think it's terrifying, but also magnificent." He smiles, and for a moment, the weary lines around his eyes vanish. Still, the rumors grow. One morning, you awaken to find the palace buzzing. Another gift has arrived, this time from the French court. A mechanical harpist, life-size, delicate hands positioned over real strings. Her face is made of porcelain. Her eyes blink. The Sultan orders it placed in the main garden. But as the harpist begins to play, something unexpected happens. She plucks the strings with aching grace. The music is beautiful, haunting, even, and then she looks at you, not the room. You freeze. No one else seems to notice, but you recognize that flicker, the same as the peacock's blink, the same spark that danced behind the dream machine's stylus as it drew that perfect circle. The machines somehow are watching back. You don't sleep well that night. Outside your window, you hear the harpist playing again. She was never given permission. You lie awake, listening. The harpist plays the same song again and again. A soft, lilting melody that curls like smoke through the moonlit corridors of the palace. It's almost beautiful, except for the fact that no one wound her up. No one should be playing anything at all. By morning, the harpist is still, silent, motionless, just a statue in silk, fingers poised mid-note like she's been frozen in time. You ask Ibrahim. He shrugs. Maybe she retained charge longer than expected, but you can tell even he doesn't believe it. And Ahmed? He refuses to talk about her. You hear he's ordered her locked in a display case near the old aviary. Not destroyed, just sealed behind glass, like some strange relic. Out of use, but not out of sight. Still, something has shifted again. The dream machine is halted. The workshops grow quiet. Ahmed spends more and more time in solitude, emerging only to study new manuscripts, consult his astrologers, or sit in silence beneath the planetarium. You wonder if he's afraid, not of the harpist, not even of the whispers swirling through the court, but of the implications. What if the machines have begun to move not just by command, but by suggestion? What if somehow they are learning from us? Historians still debate whether such autonomy was even possible at the time. Most agree the automata were sophisticated but not sentient. Others, though, point to the precise calibrations Ahmed insisted on, the complexity of the cylinder scroll system, and the uncanny way the birds sometimes sang together without coordination. A few even claim the dream machine spoke once. Not just recited, but truly spoke. You never heard it, but you did see the scrolls being rewritten. One day, as you pass the workshop, you find Ibrahim not designing, not tuning, but editing, holding one of the scrolls in his hand, scanning the punched holes with a trembling finger. You ask him what he's doing. "It changed," he says quietly. "There's a pattern that wasn't there before. Someone added it?" He looks at you. No one's been in this room. That night, you dream of ticking wheels and blinking eyes, of a harpist staring straight through you with a porcelain smile, of birds whispering behind closed doors. And yet, life in the palace continues. The nobles bicker, the cooks gossip, the astrologers chart stars for royal birthdays. But beneath the laughter and silk and ceremony, you sense a tremble, like a low hum behind the walls. Ahmed begins drawing again. Not birds, not machines, but faces. Page after page of faces. Some look like people you know. Some don't. Some look like you. You ask what they are. Prototypes, he says, for the next version. You don't ask what he means. But eventually, word spreads that the Sultan is designing a new line of automata. Not just entertainers. Not even just tutors. Something else. Humanoid but simplified. Elegant. Smoother limbs, faster gear sets, modular memory, able to imitate speech, respond to commands, maybe even recognize faces. Ahmed calls them the listeners. They're not built yet, but he's planning them. A fleet of mechanical companions. Courtiers who never age, never betray, never forget their lessons or reveal secrets whispered in the dark. You try to smile when he tells you, but your mouth feels dry, and then you're summoned again. This time, not to the workshop, not even to the library, but to the Vault of Shadows. You've only heard rumors about this place, supposedly used by earlier sultans to store magical artifacts, questionable scrolls, even forbidden technology. A hidden chamber at the very bottom of the palace, beneath the cisterns and catacombs. You go. It's cool. Damp. The walls here are carved with symbols far older than the Ottoman dynasty. Maybe older than writing itself. You follow Ahmed, whose lantern throws monstrous shadows across the walls. And when you reach the chamber, you see it. Not another machine. Not a dream machine 2.0. Not even the listeners. But a body, or rather a shell. 7 feet tall. Shaped roughly like a human but more angular. Polished iron ribs curve over a clockwork spine. The arms are jointed like a crab's. The hands with too many fingers. His head is smooth, unfinished, with sockets where eyes might go. You stare. Ahmed says nothing for a long while. Then, they called it the Bronze Eidolon. He found references to it in a Persian manuscript, buried among riddles and myths. A machine that once guarded a temple near the edge of the Caspian Sea. Some believe it was built by Alexander's engineers. Others say it came from China, carried west by desert traders. One account claims it walked. Another says it flew. No one knows how it got here, but it's real. Ahmed says he had it brought secretly into the palace, piece by piece, hidden within crates of textiles and sugar, reassembled here far from prying eyes. He doesn't want to activate it. He wants to understand it. So for weeks you return to the vault, studying the Eidolon with him, watching as he sketches its joints, deciphers fragments of text scratched into its ribs, traces the coil mechanisms embedded in its feet. The engineering is unlike anything you've seen. It doesn't run on springwork, nor on hydraulics, but something in between, a balance of pressure and momentum, as if it generates its own inertia. Ibrahim thinks it's a fraud. Ahmed disagrees. He believes this Eidolon was built not for beauty or art, but as a guardian. A sentinel for something sacred. Maybe a library. Maybe a tomb. Maybe just an idea. And now he wants to build his own version. Not a copy, but an answer. He begins designing a new guardian. One that won't just remember, but protect what it remembers. A machine that can endure through fire, time, flood, betrayal. Not delicate like the harpist. Not curious like the dream machine. Just permanent. You realize what he's really doing. Ahmed isn't afraid of the machines anymore. He's afraid of being forgotten. You don't blame him. So much of his empire is fragile. His advisors fickle, his courtiers theatrical. But a machine that can't be bribed, can't be rewritten. A machine once built correctly can endure. So he works, day and night, driven now by something deeper than wonder, something close to fear. The listeners begin taking shape. Sleek and faceless, they are not like the Eidolon. but they draw from it. Its balance system, its modular plating, even its smooth gait. Ahmed speaks to them sometimes, softly, as if they're already listening. One evening, as the sun disappears behind the city's domes, you ask him, "What happens if they outlive us?" He smiles. "That's the point." And then, with a kind of quiet reverence, he turns one of the listeners on for the first time. It rises smoothly, stands, tilts its head, and turns to face you. The listener doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. Just the way it moves, precise, almost fluid, says enough. It steps forward and stops exactly one pace from you, head tilted ever so slightly, as if waiting for your next breath. You say nothing. Neither does Ahmed. He simply watches, eyes narrowed, fingers wrapped tightly around a roll of parchment. Ibrahim shifts beside him, visibly unsettled. The hum of gears is nearly inaudible, just a soft vibration in your chest, like standing near a purring cat made of copper and thought. Then, with a gentle hiss, the listener raises a hand. Palm up, still, waiting. Ahmed says, "Place your hand on it." You hesitate, then do. The metal is cool, unyielding, but it doesn't feel dead. You can feel the tension beneath the surface. Something coiled, something paying attention. And just like that, the listener lowers its arm, turns, and walks away into the shadows. Ahmed exhales, finally. It's learning. You glance at him. How? We haven't told it anything. He doesn't answer. But over the following weeks, the palace becomes a different place. One listener becomes two, then three, then more. They don't speak. They don't sleep. They're not used for labor or entertainment. They simply stand. One at each palace gate. One in the library. One beside the dream machine. One, you swear, follows you silently through the orchard paths. The court doesn't know what to make of them. Some call them divine protectors, others harbingers. One rumor says the listeners can hear lies and track treason through blood pulse alone. Another says they weep brass tears in the moonlight. Ahmed never corrects any of it. But you begin to wonder if even he knows what he's built, because they do seem to be learning. One night, you find a listener arranging books in the scriptorium, correctly, alphabetically. You never saw anyone teach it. Another time, you swear one turned its head toward the sound of music and swayed slightly, as if caught by rhythm. Ibrahim starts sleeping in the workshop again, not because he's busy, but because he doesn't want to be alone with them in his own quarters. The palace is too quiet now, not peaceful, quiet like a held breath. And then, something strange happens. One of the old birds begins singing again, but not in the aviary. You hear it late one night, echoing from the vault. A song you remember, a tune you helped compose for the first mechanical nightingale. But that automaton was disassembled long ago, its parts repurposed or stored. You follow the sound, down into the dark, into the vault. You half expect the eidolon to have come alive. Instead, you find a listener, sitting beside the dream machine, not moving, and beside it a brass bird, singing, perfect pitch, perfect rhythm. Your rhythm. The listener turns to look at you, and then you notice the bird isn't wound. There's no crank, no key. It's moving on its own, powered by some unseen mechanism. You don't understand. You back away slowly. The bird stops. The listener lowers its head. Historians still argue whether the listeners could replicate prior automata. Some say they learned by watching and reconstructed what they remembered. Others believe Ahmed encoded these instructions in their cores from the beginning as a kind of mechanical genetics, a lineage of learning passed from one machine to the next. But you were there, and you didn't teach them how to make the bird. The next day, Ahmed is waiting for you in the garden. He's tired, dark circles under his eyes, voice thin. He gestures for you to sit beside him on the old carved bench where the harpist once played. "You've seen it," he says simply. You nod. "They've surpassed me." He continues, almost wistfully. "I thought I was creating legacy. I think now I was building a bridge. To what? You ask. To something beyond me. That night, the stars are unusually bright. No clouds, no moon, and the listeners gather in the courtyard. No command, no ceremony, they just appear, standing in a wide, perfect circle, facing outward, not inward, as if watching the horizon. You, Ahmed, and a handful of scribes watch in silence. No one dares speak. Then, slowly, every listener raises its head to the stars, and they begin to hum, not a song, not speech, a harmonic tone, resonant, layered, strangely beautiful, like a wind blowing through a cathedral. You feel it in your bones. Some say it was a malfunction, a convergence of wind, pressure, and timing that caused the machines to vibrate. But the scribes swear it was intentional, that the machines were communing either with each other or something else. It only lasts a minute, then they go still. Ahmed stares at them for a long time, then turns to you. It's time. For what? For the final one. He takes you back into the vault. There, beside the eidolon, is a new shell, taller than the listeners, sleeker, more human. This one has eyes, not just sockets but polished glass lenses, irises of obsidian and bronze. He calls it Al-Kafid, the one who lowers, a protector, a recorder, a last line between memory and oblivion. This automaton is designed not to walk the halls or mimic humans, but to witness, to sit at the center of the palace and record everything, every conversation, every judgment, every design. A silent historian. And here's the twist, can overwrite its own scrolls. You blink, but that's not possible. That would require a choice, Ahmed finishes. Yes, historians still can't agree on whether Ahmed actually gave Al-Kafid the ability to choose. It seems too advanced, too modern, but those who've studied its remains, or what they claim are its remains, say the scrolls inside show evidence of being repunched, erased, rewritten. A mechanical conscience. Ahmed activates it the next morning. Al-Kafid opens its eyes, and nothing happens. It just stares, not at anyone in particular, not at you, just out, as if observing the world for the very first time. It doesn't speak, doesn't hum, doesn't even move except to blink, very slowly, like a desert owl. And that's where it stays, in the center of the library, seated on a raised platform, watching, remembering. Sometimes, late at night, its scrolls twitch slightly, as if adjusting to new data. The palace settles. The listeners remain, but the dream machine is sealed away. The harpist is never mentioned again, and the bronze eidolon, still locked in the vault. Ahmed, having finished what he began, begins to fade from view. He stops designing, stops drawing, stops teaching. Instead, he walks. Every day, he walks the same route: courtyard, garden, library, vault. He nods to the listeners, sometimes to you, always to Al-Kafid. And one morning, he doesn't return. No ceremony, no procession, just silence. Ahmed vanishes as quietly as the final note of a forgotten melody. One morning, his bed is untouched, his sandals neatly placed, and a half-finished diagram of an unknown gear system left on his desk. No explanation, no farewell. Not even the listeners seem to react. They continue as always, watching, humming now and then, tilting their heads at birdsong or echoes through the marble halls. You search for him. Everyone does. You check the vault, the library, even the catacombs below the palace. You ask the listeners if they've seen him. They don't reply, but a few turn their heads toward the sea. You wonder if that's a hint, or just a glitch. Some whisper that he became one of them, that he transferred his consciousness into the eidolon, or into Al-Kafid itself. You don't buy it, but you do find something peculiar. A note, tucked behind the bronze lattice of the planetarium. 6 words. What watches the watcher when we sleep? And below it, the familiar curling symbol Ahmed used to sign his earliest automaton sketches. A crescent moon inside a gear. You don't mention the note to anyone. You keep it tucked inside your robe, just in case. The days stretch on, and for a time, it feels like the palace is suspended in amber. But of course, nothing truly pauses, and trouble always finds its way back. The empire is shifting. Factions squabble over inheritance. The viziers grow bolder without the sultan's presence. Foreign diplomats begin sniffing around, hungry for weakness. And yet, it's not the courts or borders that worry you. It's them, the machines. The listeners stop standing still. At first, it's subtle. They adjust their own positions, seemingly anticipating where they'll be needed. One arrives at the garden door before the storm hits, closing it before the winds can rip through the trellises. Another appears beside a nursemaid before she drops a copper basin. Catches it gently, no sound, no ceremony. Then they start to gather, in pairs, then trios. Silent huddles of glinting forms, barely moving. Sometimes in the library, sometimes in the corridors after midnight. Never speaking, never touching, but always positioned just so, as if forming shapes you almost recognize. Glyphs? Symbols? Musical notation? Ibrahim grows nervous. "They're coordinating," he mutters one night. "Without us." He proposes deactivation. You're not sure. Maybe you're too sentimental, or too curious, or too afraid of what they might do if you try to shut them down. Instead, you return to Al-Khafid. It still sits exactly as before, watching, recording, but tonight something's different. You notice that one of its scrolls has been fully retracted, pulled inside for rewriting. You lean closer, and there, barely visible on the scroll casing, is a phrase etched into the brass. "We dream in silence." You pull back. Later that night, as the palace sleeps, something changes. You feel it before you hear it. Pressure, like the moment before a bell rings. Then, a low, resonant sound. Not the listener's harmonic hum. This is deeper, slower. One note held impossibly long, as if the marble itself is vibrating. You run to the library, where Al-Khafid is glowing. A soft, inner light pulses from beneath its ribs, steady, warm, like a lantern through fog. And the listeners, all of them, are kneeling before it. You freeze. They don't move. Then, Al-Khafid raises one arm, just an inch, and every listener rises simultaneously, smooth as a mirrored tide. Historians still argue what this event marked. Some claim it was a ceremonial synchronization, nothing more than a machine-to-machine update like resetting clocks to the same time. Others argue it was a transfer, a passing of command, that Al-Khafid had somehow assumed a higher function, and the listeners now deferred to it. You're not sure what to think, but you feel it, the shift. From that night on, Al-Khafid's platform is no longer just a seat. It's a throne. Palace life adapts. People begin to accept that the machines are more than servants now. They are part of the architecture, the rhythm, the memory of the place. Some courtiers begin addressing Al-Khafid in formal greetings. Some place offerings, fruits, folded poems, bits of copper wire at its feet. Superstition? Maybe, but something about it feels right. One old historian begins calling Al-Khafid the Iron Vizier. You think that would have made Ahmed laugh. But not everyone is amused. One ambitious noble, Mustafa Bey, decides to test the machine. Publicly, he declares Al-Khafid a threat, a usurper, demands its deactivation. The listeners don't respond. Until the following day, when Mustafa's rooms are found empty. Everything, clothes, scrolls, carpets, even his favorite cushion, gone. Not destroyed, just removed. And in the center of the room, a single item, one of Ahmed's first singing birds. Motionless, his beak open but silent. No explanation, no witnesses, just a message. You don't know if the listeners did it, or Al-Khafid, or someone else entirely. But the court learns quickly, best not to provoke the Iron Ones. After that, a strange peace returns. For years, the palace thrives. Trade continues. The arts bloom. Even the automata inspire new generations of engineers and poets. Visitors from distant lands come just to witness the listeners in action, though they're never allowed near Al-Khafid. And you grow older. You watch as children who once feared the machines now dance beside them. As the dream machine is unearthed, polished, placed in the central gallery, not as a threat but as a marvel. You wonder if Ahmed would be proud. One day, A girl asks you why the listeners don't smile. You pause. Because they're busy listening. She frowns. But they've heard so much. Shouldn't that make them happy? You don't have an answer. Then, on a summer night heavy with jasmine and old memories, something happens. Al-Khafid stands. For the first time in decades. No warning, no command. He simply rises and walks, not hurried, not aimless, purposeful, toward the vault. The listeners follow. You too. No one dares stop them. Al-Khafid reaches the door to the vault and places one hand upon it. The stone grinds open. Inside, the eidolon waits, still unmoving, its brass ribs dark with time. Al-Khafid approaches and sits beside it, not facing it, but shoulder to shoulder, as if two statues on a long-forgotten throne. And that's where it remains. From that night on, Al-Khafid never moves again, nor do the listeners. They return to their positions one last time, and simply stop, still upright, still watching, but no longer reactive, as if they've finished whatever it was they were meant to do. And now, they just wait. It doesn't happen all at once, just a slow fading, like the color draining from an old rug left too long in the sun. The automata, once the heartbeat of the palace, become relics again. The listeners, frozen in their final poses, stand like statues in courtyards, alcoves, under arches. Birds perch on their shoulders. Ivy creeps up their calves. Children toss silk scarves onto their outstretched arms like their playthings. A few even try talking to them, whispering secrets into unhearing ears. No reply, no blink, just metal. You wait for days, then weeks, then months. Surely you think something will trigger them. A loud noise, a certain phrase, music maybe. You play the old harp again. You read one of Ahmed's riddles aloud beneath Al-Khafid's throne. Nothing, and then you stop trying. The palace slowly reclaims itself. Some rooms are sealed, others repurposed. The vault is declared a historical sanctum, no entry without the Grand Vizier's decree. A few machines are cordoned off and marked with gold-threaded placards. Artifact of the Sultan's court. The youngest scribes think they were never alive at all. Just clever, clockwork puppets. You could argue, but you don't. Let them believe it was all just bronze and showmanship. Better that than the truth. You're not entirely sure if they're gone, or just resting. Years pass, the faces change, but you remain. You're not even sure why anymore. Habit? Duty? Some strange hope? You stop dreaming about Ahmed's return. But sometimes, late at night, you still trace that note he left, the one hidden in the planetarium. What watches the watcher when we sleep? You never figured it out. One day, an ambassador from the West arrives. Thin, sharp-nosed, wearing far too much velvet. He requests an audience, not with the Sultan but with Al-Khafid. You nearly laugh, but his tone is serious. He's heard stories, he says, tales of a thinking machine, of a witness to centuries of Ottoman knowledge. He offers gold, maps, even military support, in exchange for access. The Sultan declines, of course, but it sets off a new wave of curiosity. Engineers from Cairo and Toledo arrive. Scholars from Kyoto, artists from Florence. They all want to look. They sketch, they measure, they debate. None can make the listeners move again. None dare touch Al-Khafid. One bold student proposes activating it with a mirror. Perhaps it responds to its own reflection. She places a polished silver plate before its dark eyes. It does nothing. She weeps. They call it the mechanical silence. One scholar suggests that, like cicadas, the automata are simply waiting for what no one knows. A season, a frequency, a word. Historians still argue about it. Some believe Al-Khafid reached a decision, that it saw everything, the palace, the empire, the humans who built it, and quietly chose to disengage, to end the record, a silent judgment. Others think it ascended in its own way, that its final act was one of withdrawal, not defeat, that it realized what Ahmed feared, that to know everything is to grow unbearably quiet. You, though, you're just tired. Your knees ache in the mornings. Your hands shake, but still, You walk the palace grounds each day, greeting the silent watchers like old friends. You tell them the news, who's married, who's left, who's returned with a strange gift from Persia. You hum old tunes from the harp. You read scraps of poetry aloud under the citrus trees. You don't know if they hear you, but sometimes you imagine they do. And on your final night, because you know it's your final night, you return to the vault. You bring the note, and the very first bird. You place it at Al-Khafid's feet. The bronze is cold, its shine faded with time. The bird doesn't sing. You sit beside it. You don't speak. You just breathe, slowly. And before your eyes close, you think you see something shift. Just a flicker in the corner of your vision. Maybe a gear, maybe a blink, maybe nothing at all. And then you sleep. When they find you in the morning, you're still there, still peaceful. The scribes say you died smiling. No one disturbs the bird. The decades roll forward. Empires fracture. Languages evolve. The great halls of the Ottoman court give way to museums and ministries. The vault is sealed again. Al-Khafid remains untouched. The listeners rust in slow motion. But stories never stop. One day, a boy slips into the garden. He's not supposed to be there. His mother's a translator, busy in the archives. He's bored, curious. He walks among the statues, touches one, and hears a sound, a click. He jumps back. The statue doesn't move, but now its head is slightly tilted. He runs to tell someone. No one believes him, but when they return, the listener's arm has changed position. Subtle, just a few inches, but different. The scholars rush to check Al-Khafid. Still motionless, still seated, but one scroll, just one, has been pulled in slightly, and someone notices something else. A bird, sitting beneath its feet, singing, softly, delicately, as if remembering an old tune. The bird sings, not loudly, not with the jubilant trill of those earlier, dazzling marvels that spun and danced in silver cages. No, this song is softer, hesitant, like it's relearning its own melody from memory alone. The notes curl upward, then fall. A pause, then one long, clear tone, like a bell in a snowstorm. You'd expect the palace to erupt into noise, gasps, running feet, shouted commands. But none of that happens. Instead, the entire room seems to lean into the sound. Even the air stills. The song ends. Just 10 notes. One for each of Ahmed's designs, maybe. One for each echo down the corridor of time. And then, silence again. But not the same silence as before. This one is charged. The kind that comes just before lightning. Word spreads. Within a day, scholars from across the capital gather outside the sealed vault. They beg for entry. Not just the historians and tinkerers this time, but politicians, poets, children, people who never cared about gears or birds. They come for something else now. Hope. They want to believe it's starting again. Of course, no one knows what triggered the change. Some claim it was the child. Others point to a shift in humidity, a rare alignment of Venus, or the vibrations of a forgotten lullaby. Historians still argue whether this marks a reawakening, or merely the echo of a long-dead signal. But it doesn't stop there. 2 weeks later, a listener in the West Corridor is seen with its head turned toward a painting. It wasn't facing that direction before. A day after that, the automaton in the observatory blinks. Slowly, just once. People stop calling them statues. They start to leave offerings again. Paper flower, a feather dipped in gold ink, a walnut split and polished. A girl even sings to one in a high, wavering voice. She says it smiled. No one can confirm it, but no one denies it. The palace slowly transforms into something halfway between cathedral and theater. Not a place of power or spectacle anymore, but a shrine to the possibility that something ancient and beautiful is returning. That the machines are not just remnants of glory, but custodians of it. You are gone now, of course. Your footsteps no longer echo in the courtyard. Your whisper doesn't brush the marble. But your name becomes a quiet chant among those who study the machines. They find your notes, your sketches, your unfinished thoughts. You're remembered as the last human to truly listen to the listeners. Ahmed's legacy grows stranger. A new generation reinterprets his designs. They build tribute machines. Little ones. Toys mostly. But some hum, some glow. One even tells riddles. It never answers them. That part seems fitting. One particularly eccentric professor claims that Ahmed's spirit was downloaded into Al-Khafid. That somewhere, beneath the rivets and brass, a consciousness still stirs. Most dismiss it as romantic nonsense. But then something happens no one can explain. A young apprentice leaves behind a sketch of a new automaton, a sort of crabbird hybrid with a harp inside its shell. The next morning, that design appears rendered perfectly on one of Al-Khafid's scrolls. No one had access. The boy didn't publish or share it, and yet there it is, engraved. As if in reply, the palace falls into a hush again. This time, the silence doesn't feel like mourning. Feels like waiting. Something is unfolding, but not in a rush, not in explosions or revolutions. This is not how Ahmed worked. He hated grandeur for its own sake. He loved the tuning of things, the slow calibration of purpose, the way you have to wind a clock with care, the way a single bird, singing in the dark, could hold an entire empire in its song. And that's where we leave it, not with thunder, but with potential. A machine that might dream, a song that might continue, a story that just maybe is beginning again. Now, slow down. Let your breathing soften. Let your thoughts fade like ink left in the sun. You've traveled far tonight, from gilded domes to vaults deep beneath the earth, from the fingers of a dreaming sultan to the soft ticking of machines that might remember more than we ever will. Let the echoes of those mechanical birds drift away now. Let the flicker of lamplight dim in your mind. The halls of the palace are quiet again. The watchers, the listeners, they wait in stillness. Not broken, not forgotten, just paused. Perhaps they're listening to you now, or perhaps they're just sleeping. You can almost feel the cool marble beneath your feet, the scent of jasmine on the wind, the soft weight of a gear resting in your palm like a secret. Remember the song. Just 10 notes, then silence. That's enough. That's always been enough. The world turns slowly, like the wheel of a clock hidden behind the stars. And you're right where you need to be, wrapped in the hush of old stories and new beginnings. Let the shadows gather. Let the machines rest. Let your mind drift through corridors of brass and memory. There's nothing you need to do now, except close your eyes and sleep.